Draw a cube. Now try squashing it, stretching it, and twisting it. This concept is called shape modification, or shape change. Today, we're going to use it to start designing characters from scratch. Let's go.
Level up your side hustle, exercise your mind muscle. Buckle up inside, buckle, even though you might struggle. Climb aboard and take your practice to a high level. Travel on this life vessel, watching knowledge swim. When I head off on my mind, I forget about the time. Guess I'm dust up in my eyes, then get back up on the grind. All these old discoveries and goals in front of me. I'm running free into another world that I've chosen to explore. Now I'm on another echelon, the feeling is enormous. Doors are open before there weren't even options. What I find often is that I feel accomplished when all these brilliant concepts filling my noggin, ready to dust off my skills like I'm polished. Going at my pace, the membership ain't clocking, no. Stop watching, no race involved, just make your move and wake yourself up to make some cool stuff. So much to do, now that you're fueled up, just make a move. Even if you're too scared, you might be wrong. You can ride with Skillshare to drive it home. Leveling up with cool stuff, so much to do. Now that you're fueled up, just make a move. Even if you're still scared, you're bound to fall. You can ride with Skillshare to drive it home.
In order to understand how we can change shapes, we need to know what they're made of. So let's take a look at all the parts of a shape. So shapes have three main parts. They have faces, edges, and vertices. Faces are the large areas surrounded by vertices and edges. Edges are these lines we see described here. And the vertices, or the vertex, are the corners. So we have faces, vertices, and edges, not eggs. Now, if you remember from the previous drawing class, we have four types of shapes: points, lengths, areas, and volumes. The reason we use the lower resolution shapes to build the higher resolution shapes is because a zero-dimensional point is simply a vertex. A one-dimensional shape is an edge, and a two-dimensional shape is a face. Combine all these together and you get a volume. All of these individual parts of a shape are subject to change when forces act upon them. As illustrators and animators, we can change shapes to make them more interesting or to tell our audience more about a certain character or object. We'll get back to that. First, let's learn how to change a shape. So there are two main ways to change a shape. The first is via manipulation, and the second is transformation. For the purpose of this course, we'll define a manipulation as a change that maintains the mass of an object. So the mass, how much object there actually is, the amount of particles that make up the object remains the same, despite the change. Now, a transformation is any change whereas the mass of the object does not remain the same. Some common manipulations are to squash a shape. You can stretch something. You can twist. You can bend. That's supposed to say bend. We can bend. There are an infinite number of possibilities. We can even put down, you can pinch an object. Like imagine if you just took it between your pointer finger and your thumb. So the goal is to practice and master drawing as many manipulations as possible. So let's see what this will look like. We're going to use a square for both of these examples. Actually, we'll make it a cube so you can sort of exemplify the most complex version of something. If you squash a cube, we can just press down on the top and then the sides might come out like this, right? Squash a cube. Now, if we stretch a cube, it would be the opposite. The sides would cave in, sort of like it's made of clay. Now we can twist a cube. We can draw some curves for the sides. We can bend it by changing all its edges into curves instead of straights, or at least a select few edges into curves. We can even pinch a cube. Imagine we just squish it with our fingers, sort of like maybe something like this. You see that? Almost like, it's like we just took the cube between our fingers and just squashed it. We exerted that sort of force on it, right? So these are all examples of manipulations because the mass of the object is still the same. We're still trying to keep the same amount of object. Now, what are some examples of common transformations? Some common ones will be to enlarge. We can make something bigger. Then we can also shrink something, make it smaller. We can split it, turn it into two objects. So now they each have a fraction of the mass that the one object had before the split. We can bevel the edge of an object. We can also round. Let's take the cube down here now. To enlarge it, we can make it bigger than it was before. To shrink it, we just make it smaller. It's that simple. We're transforming the object because the mass is not the same. Now what about splitting it? So we're going to try to draw the cube here. We can just split it across just like there, just like that. So this is a split. Now we turn one mass into two masses. We can also bevel it. So say we flattened out the cube like this, flatten. Now to bevel it, all we have to do is take the edge and slice a piece like there, so just like across here, something like that. Then we can also round the edges, so then we're going to round out these edges. So think of your drawing like clay that you can freely mold into whatever you like. Mastering basic shape changes can make it easier to draw complex objects and also to design interesting and appealing characters. So we can come up with all sorts of cool and interesting ideas by learning basic shape changes. Let's see how we can use this when designing our characters. We already discussed what a character is in this video here. We learned that a character is just a depiction of a person or personality, and that all we need to do to make a character is to personify a shape. Let's start by making an interesting shape to personify. Start with a circle. We can change its proportions a bit. Let's say we trim the sides a bit, transform it. We can make it taller. Stretch it. And then we can, let's flatten the bottom and the sides. Okay, that'll do for now for our interesting shape number one. Now let's next take a square using a 3B pencil now so you guys can see this a little better. Now let's stretch this square. Make the top bigger than the bottom. We can even make one side straight. So we're just iteratively changing this square to come up with an interesting design. All right, cool. So I kind of like this shape. This is just, these are the same, just reversed. Let's stick with this one. So in order to personify these shapes, I'm going to arrange them in the form of a human. Give them a little bit of 3D treatment so I can know exactly what I'm dealing with here. So we know that a human has a head, rib cage, pelvis, legs, and arms. Those are the sort of major parts of a human, and then of course a spine as well. Start with this shape. Maybe I'll reverse it for the head. Something like that. Just stretch it. And for the appendages, I'm going to use this square shape. Well, the shape that we took from a square. So that's a little interesting. Let me try that again. All right, so this is sort of cool. I'm sort of getting this cool robotic sort of shape out of this design, it looks like. This same shape. Just manipulate it a little bit. This is number one. This is number two. Let's make number three down here. Trying to add this cube back in subtle ways. think I found a design that I like, so let's do number 4, last one. Okay, so this could definitely still use some more work, but there, now we have a character. All right, finally, now that we have a cool design, how do we then push this design? How do we push our character designs to their limits? Showing how our character shapes can change tells the audience, will tell the audience, whether that be your fellow animator or those watching your animated production, more about your character. So let's do that. I'm gonna start with, well, this character is a robot, so they're not exactly made of a material that's very changeable. So I'm gonna change them to something more organic. So let's take this design over here for a sec. So we could show our audience that this character can think like sort of like an alligator looking character now. Gotta find a cool hat for him or something. This character, since he's organic, he can squash and stretch. So if he's, surprised, maybe his head will stretch up like this. Or he can stretch in a way, sort of say he's turning his head. We got that typical breakdown pose that usually squashes. As animators, we use that a lot. We can show that his head can squash too. We'd also want to let potentially another animator who might be working on this project with us know how this character can move. So how far can they swing their jaw open, for example? This is probably a profile, something like this. And we can show our fellow animators how much it can open at its max so they know not to go too far. You can even get as specific as plotting down the degree that his jaw opens or their arm bends or anything that's important to your character. By setting your character's extremities, you will have further refined your design by telling your viewer and possibly your fellow animators more about the character by setting how far their shape can be manipulated or even transformed in some cases. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed it. Let's dig a little bit deeper. For my drawing students, I want to talk a little more in depth about my specific process for designing characters. So if you're interested, feel free to click join and become a Noble Frugal Studio drawing student today. Special thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Check them out in the link below because the first 500 people to sign up using my link will get 1 month free of Skillshare. These are my recommended courses in the illustration and music categories, but Skillshare also has a variety of classes in photography, UX and UI design, 3D modeling, entrepreneurship, and much more. So check those out and happy learning. Huge shout out to my patrons, especially Owen Art on Patreon. You guys have access to all the drawing student content as well for your loyal support over the years. Thank you. That's all from me, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.